Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome from America, the Rocks?
So I want you to think back to 1982, back to your teenage years. You've got £5 or maybe you've got $10. You have a denim vest on and you're at your local record shop. You see a cover with a flaming logo and three guys who look like they've just clocked out of a steel mill. This wasn't just another album, it was the American answer to the new wave of British heavy metal. For one summer, they were right on the edge of the big leagues, opening for bands like Judas Priest, Iron Maiden and tearing up small clubs like the Marquee. So why aren't they headlining stadiums today? Well, let's talk about the gear, the sweat and the absolute residency in London that should have made them kings. The Rods were a power trio from Cortland in upstate New York. Drums, Carol Kennedy, a drumming powerhouse who would end up producing bands like Anthrax. On bass, Gary Bordonaro, but at the heart of the Rods sound was David Rock Feinstein. Most guys in 1982 were moving to superstrats, but Rock was blue collar and Gibson all the way. He lived on a Les Paul Jr., normally a double cut, and a single cut melody makers. These aren't fancy guitars, these are working man's tools. He replaced the stock P90 pickups in the Junior and the single coil pickup in the melody maker with humbucking pickups to push his Marshall JMP stacks into even more overdrive. He got a chainsaw mid-range that defined this album's sound. And he wasn't a scale shredder, he was a riff master who played with aggressive vibrato that made those simple songs feel like a punch to the gut. Now I love Rock's playing because he is very much of a rock guy, if you know what I mean, no pun intended. He doesn't do big whammy bar dives or anything like that. No complex finger tapping or anything. He is very much a rock and roll guitar player, almost like a supercharged Chuck Berry cross with Ted Nugent. More about the Nuge later. So their first two albums, 1980's Rock Hard and 1981's self-titled, were riff-rocking affairs, rough and ready. Like I said, Ted Nugent, lead guitar playing, but I think Ted Nugent style riffs with an even hairier edge, if that's even possible. But for this album, they really sort of tightened the screws. They went for an overall sound that I think is a more mainstream sound, but with that, there was no selling out here. These guys were still rocking with the riffs and the songs. Talking about songs, let's go through the album track by track. So side 1, track 1, we have Too Hot to Stop, Feel the Fire, It's Burning in My Soul, as it says in the lyrics. This is just a riffarama, if I can use that word, a riffarama of classic rock Feinstein riffs here. Track 2, Waiting for Tomorrow, a mid-tempo stomper with a hook, stays in your head for days. Now we have Violation. Now I will come on to the lyrics after we look at the tracks, but Violation, pure aggression. This is menacing. This is a menacing song. So as Gary Bordonaro's bass is thick enough to stop a tank, and I don't mean the UK band of the same name. Burn by Love, an anthem. It's got classic 1982 structure, massive shouting choruses. Track 5, Wild Dogs, Fight to Be Free. High Speed Chaos, and Carol Kennedy really earns his Hurricane nickname on this one. And then we have at track 6, believe it or not, a Motown cover, You Keep Me Hanging On. The Rods have turned this into a meat grinder. Absolutely brilliant. Track 7, Rockin' and Rollin' Again. I'm a rocker and I'm never gonna stop. This was our manifesto back in 1982. Track 8, End of the Line. This is a melodic turn that showed that the Rods could really write a hit without losing their teeth. Track 9, No Sweet Talk Honey. As I say, we'll discuss the lyrics in a second. This is gritty street level rock. And finally, track 10, The Night Lives to Rock, the perfect closer for a midnight drive. Now, a lyrical disclaimer. Looking at lines like I'm going to take you home and make you mine, or the general vibe of Violation, it's clear that these lyrics were very much a product of their time. They were raw, they were crude, and very much part of that early 80s machismo. Today they'd definitely be frowned upon, but back then that was just the unfiltered language of the street metal scene. and on to gigs. So in early 1982, the Rods took over the Marquee Club in London in Wardour Street. Critics in Kerrang called this the loudest thing to hit London since the Blitz, and the set list was a relentless assault. Here's a quick look at the set list. It includes things like Too Hot to Stop, Rockin' and Rollin', Waiting for Tomorrow, Getting Higher, Crank It Up, one of my favourite Rod songs, and Power Lover, the finale that often blew the fuses. They played with a ferocity that made the British kids realise that American metal wasn't just glitter and hairspray, it really had teeth. In fact, it had fangs. So after London, the Rods hit the road with a vengeance. In fact, they opened the first dates of Judas Priest's World Vengeance Tour in the US. Let's look at some of the dates here. It includes venues like Stabler Arena in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Often the bill was a triple header. We had the Rods, Crocus and the Mighty Priest headlining. While Crocus were pushing a more polished sound, the Rods were the raw energy that woke the crowd up. They also supported Maiden on the UK leg of the Beast on the Road tour. This is where Maiden were really making it big, really pushing the envelope into these big shows. The Rods were right there, standing in the shadow of giants. But as 1983 rolled in, the industry split between glam and thrash. The Rods ended up being too pure metal for the radio, and maybe too classic for the thrash kids. They were a blue-collar band caught in a changing world. Unfortunately, the Rods did not become the next Iron Maiden, but Wild Dogs remains a masterclass in power trio metal. It's an honest, loud, working man's record. If you still have your copy, go spin it. If you don't, go find one, because for one summer, way back in 1982, the Rods were the kings of the road.